You were the chosen one! Bring balance to the Force! Not leave it in darkness!
Canon, this was supposed to be the one. This camera, the RP, was supposed to be and could have been so much more. So yeah, in this video, we're going to talk about what I consider to be one of Canon's biggest hiccups when it comes to releasing a new camera and really screwing over video people. And yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. So let's start by talking about this new camera that was announced today, the Canon RP. And there's been several videos out already. Lots of us were super excited for this camera. I was excited for it. Potato Jet, you should check out his video. He was super excited for it. Even Camera Conspiracies was actually interested and hopeful about this camera. So what went wrong? Well, Canon released the RP, which is a full frame, smaller brother sister to this camera, the Canon EOS R. And this camera from the outset looked to be the ultimate, the perfect YouTube camera. It had a full frame sensor, it had a flip out screen, you knew it was going to have good autofocus, but there are two massive issues with this camera and reasons I'm not even going to touch the thing. We'll get to that a little bit later, but first I want to acknowledge that I understand this is a budget entry level full frame camera, and I was from the outset expecting there to be a crop for 4K. I expected there not to be good 4K and that the autofocus was going to be terrible, that we would have rolling shutter. Completely understandable. I even wasn't looking for C-Log, which the EOS R has, and I totally understand Canon has to keep selling this camera, so they can't make something much cheaper and as good or close to good. Canon just really crippled this camera for video shooters. There's other things like no 720p, 120 frames per second, which I don't think a lot of us were really looking forward to. The battery life is going to be terrible. It has the little M50 battery, even though it's a full frame camera. So yes, there's problems. We were all expecting that, or at least I was expecting that. But then Canon took two things away. Two terrible things to take away, and two things they should know better not to take away. The first one, which is blowing up all over the internet right now, is that Canon removed 24 frames per second in HD from the camera. Now what is that? Why? It's not like it's a technical issue and it's really hard to do. They've had this in all their cameras going back to when they updated the 5D Mark II, so it's absurd that they would take this away, and they know better. It's not like they're thinking, well, most people shoot 30. They are very well aware of people like Peter McKinnon and other vloggers and filmmakers who, champion 24 frames per second. So they know that that is crazy popular right now, and it's a great thing that should be on like every camera. They've got it on the M50 for crying out loud. But then they took away something almost as bad as taking away 24 frames per second. This I found via Camera Labs, or Gordon. You should definitely subscribe to his channel. Great guy. And he found something that just breaks my mind. And that is that if you are using an EFS cropped sensor lens on the new RP camera, you lose HD altogether. All you have available to you is 720p and the terrible 4K. Now this is just absurd and insane. There's no technical reason to do that. The R doesn't do that. They could have included that. What is happening here? And to make things worse, I think a lot of YouTuber, vlogger types are going to be using those lenses, those crop lenses. There's lots of wide angle options. They're more affordable. So in short, the only video options available on that camera is going to be the really bad 4K with no dual pixel, rolling shutter up the wazoo, giant file sizes. And then you have HD with only full frame lenses and no 24 frames per second. So, now we know that Canon's been doing this kind of thing for a while now, and it's kind of gone unanswered. They really haven't changed their mentality over time. I think that's going to have to change at some point. All these other companies are getting better and better and better. Someday, Canon's going to have to make some changes, right? And what's crazy to me is with this camera, they could have instantly snuffed out a lot of people who would be switching to cameras like the Fuji X-T3 or the brand new Sony a6400. You know, can you imagine if Canon had a full frame flip out screen that did 1080p, 24 frames per second, could use any of their lenses on the planet with dual pixel? That would significantly reduce sales of what Sony is doing with the a6400 and future, you know, crop sensors. So why? I just cannot understand. Unfortunately, unless something changes or information has been wrong by me and several other people, even though this is a fully functioning, not a pre-production model that everyone's been talking about, I'm not going to talk about this camera. I'm not going to review something that doesn't even do 24 frames per second, which is just really sad because I was really looking forward to covering this camera, and it was kind of going to take me back to my roots of, you know, more affordable Canon DSLRs, or in this case mirrorless cameras. So really hope that Canon releases a firmware update, corrects their wrongs, but at this time, and knowing them, that's probably not going to happen. And what's very interesting is the same day the RP was released, we also had an announcement from Fuji giving us the X-T30. And what I find hilarious is I was expecting the RP to be a great new camera. It's a budget one. It's going to have some pretty solid video specs for beginners. And then traditionally, the Fuji T20, etc., have not been great cameras. So I was not even considering purchasing that. But that camera comes out. Not only does it give you 4K, albeit at a 10-minute recording limit, which sucks, but you can record externally. And you can record externally at 4K, 422, 10-bit. They've included all of their color, you know, film simulations, and it even has F-Log built in with great autofocus. What? So that camera I think is going to be phenomenal, and it's priced very aggressively at about $900, I believe. So that camera is probably going to end up on my pre-order list. Now, I understand that everyone's sick and tired of Canon rants and Canon doing this type of stuff. Trust me, I wish it wasn't this way. I'm not usually one to just trash companies left and right. And with the R, I gave it a shot, you know. I own one, I purchased one. I don't use it as much as my other cameras, but it's not a bad camera. It shoots phenomenal 1080p and decent 4K. It's got some good video specs, but this camera is just on a whole other level of nasty when you think about, you know, Canon stripping it of all this stuff that they don't need to, right? You know, they can make excuses for this camera because maybe the processor isn't fast enough or something like that, but the RP is just blatant ridiculousness. So that's going to wrap this video up. If you're hunting for an affordable camera, I will be doing a video very shortly on 10 cameras under $300. Really excited for that one, so stay tuned for that here on the channel. Hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Happy Valentine's, and we'll see you in the next video.